how do you go from this to this? You learn how to analyze journal articles. And this involves two tasks: extracting the meaning from individual articles and structure this meaning in an organized and logical way. In this video, I'm going to share with you a systematic process that can help you to better do these two tasks. I'll start by doing a step-by-step analysis of the abstract of one paper, and once this is done, I'll explain my process of making sense of it. I'll also share two principles you should follow when analyzing articles and papers. I am Miguel Moital. I am the founder and chief content developer of the Dissertation Academy. So what is the process like? The process includes 4 stages. Stage 1 is about extracting meaning, and in most cases the explicit meaning. There's also implicit meaning, but that will come as you develop your skills. We usually start with extracting the explicit meaning. Once you've done that, you can then structure that meaning. The next step involves adding content and reevaluating the structure, because this is a positive cycle where you extract meaning from an article, you structure it, and then you've got a basic structure and you add to that structure by reading more individual articles. Once you've looked at enough individual papers and extracted their meaning and structured it, you are then ready to start writing your literature review. And that's what stage 4 is about. In this video, we are mainly going to go through stage 1 and 2, extracting the meaning from an article and then structuring it. The article is entitled "Encouraging Behavioral Change Through Marketing and Management: What Can Be Achieved?" and the article's author is Jones, 2003. And this is the abstract of the article, but actually we are going to look at the first 6 lines, and as you will see, just from these 6 lines we will be able to extract a lot of meaning. Before we move on to analyze the text, it's important to clarify what is the key concept that we are dealing with. And in this instance, the key concept is behavioral change. Sentence 1 reads as: marketing and management measures, often colloquially known as soft measures, can encourage a shift from car travel to more sustainable transport modes, and may also increase public support for direct actions to limit car use. What meaning can we extract? Marketing and management measures, also called soft measures, encourage a shift, car travel, sustainable transport modes, increase public support, direct actions, and limit car use. As you can see, we could extract quite a lot of meaning from a single sentence. If we move to the second sentence of our text, we can extract the following meaning: the word effective, lack information, alternatives, and more specifically, good alternatives. If we move on to look at the third and the fourth sentences, we can extract the following meaning: negative image, better information, persuasive marketing, and shift in both attitudes and behavior. So we could identify quite a bit of content just from these sentences, and that content is summarized in this slide. So quite a few bullet points to work with. After we were able to extract some meaning, we can then move on to analyze it, to make sense of it in a structured and logical way. And that's what we are going to do now. And I'm going to move to my computer because I'm going to be doing it as I explain it. If we start by looking at the first bullet point, we can see that there are soft measures which involve marketing and management measures. So we can actually conclude that there are different types of measures, presumably with one category being soft measures. So we can start picking up that theme and we can write types of measures. And one type of measures is soft measures, and therefore we move it to a secondary bullet point of the main theme that we identified, types of measures. At this stage, we can also start using what is perhaps the most important technique you can use when analyzing text, which is ask questions. And here we can say, hold on, if there are soft measures, maybe there are other types of measures. And if we use a bit of common sense at this stage, if there are soft measures, what is the opposite? Presumably there are also hard measures. So we can write it here with a view to pursue that clue in the future. The second bullet point is encourage a shift. And if we look at the text on the left, we can see that encouraging a shift is what soft measures can achieve. So perhaps the theme here is purpose of measures. And we already have one purpose, which is encourage a shift. At this stage, we can also ask the question, is there any information about other purposes of measures, and in this instance, soft measures? Actually, if we look at our bullet points, there is a second purpose, which is increase public support. So we are breaking down the information apart and we are giving it a structure. The data here also tells us more information about increasing public support. And the particular bit of information that is available is increase public support for what? And if you look at the text on the left, it's about increasing public support for direct actions. So we can go and add that to our analysis. And in this instance, direct actions is a subset of increased public support. We also have information about what behaviors can be changed. Remember that we are trying to understand behavioral change, the theory behind behavioral change. And the particular behavior that is being referred to in the text is limiting use, and more specifically, limiting car use. So the theme here is what behavior is to be changed, and in this particular, the behavior is limit car use. I invite you to like the video if you are enjoying it, and to subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed yet. This video is part of a longer and more detailed explanation of the process that is included in the Virtual Tutor online resource. In the resource, I explain the process in more detail and provide additional examples. I invite you to look at the content of the resource, which contains many more tips and tools to help you write a better dissertation. The link is in the description below. The next point that we can analyze is the 2 bullet points about the effective and lack of information that come from the second sentence that we analyzed. And how can we make sense of it? If we look at the expression that was written by the author, we can conclude that lack of information appears to be a barrier to behavioral change. So people don't change their behavior because they lack information. So we can actually attach the meaning lack of information to a theme, which is barriers to behavioral change. Let's do that. Lack of information is one of the barriers, and therefore we are going to indent that to make it a subcategory of the main category. The text also identifies more detail about lack of information. It clarifies what sort of information people lack. And in this instance is information about alternatives. So we can, again, do it as a subset of lack of information. The text goes even further by telling us more about the alternatives. So what about the alternatives people lack information about? And in this instance, we have good alternatives. At this stage, we can actually ask a question. If one of the barriers is lack of information, what other barriers to behavioral change are there? We can actually see that there is a second barrier that is highlighted in the text that we are analyzing. And that second barrier is negative image. So the text identifies two barriers so far, barriers to behavioral change. One is lack of information, and the second one is negative image. So we are doing a structured account of the text by identifying key themes and then subthemes and subthemes of those subthemes and so on. If we move on to analyze the final sentence, we can see that the author is suggesting that there are two things that could contribute to shift both attitudes and behavior. And those two things are better information and persuasive marketing. What is the theme here? What is the author referring to? And one possible interpretation is to consider these as strategies to motivate behavioral change. And we identified two strategies. So another important bit of information coming out of the text. A final element that is worth analyzing is the last sentence, shift in attitudes and behavior. And here we can actually try to fit it in some part that we already analyzed. To me, it seems that shift in attitudes and behavior better reflects the purpose of measures. If we look at it, the purpose of behavioral change measures one of them is to encourage a shift, and this is giving us more detail about what that shift involves. In this instance, it's about shifting attitudes and also shifting behavior, and we can separate both. We are left with 3 bullet points at the end, and these 3 bullet points are car travel, sustainable transport modes, and the word effectiveness. We know that the first two are about context, and at this stage, because we are focusing on theory, we are not interested in analyzing that sort of content. And then we have the word effective. I do not recommend that you delete it. Instead, I recommend that you separate it from the rest of the text, because you never know if in the future that information doesn't become relevant. And if it does, then you can go back to it quite quickly. We are looking at one paper, and therefore we weren't too concerned with identifying who said these things. But it's good practice to keep track of who says what, because the plan is to add more content, the content from different articles to the structure. It is very important that you keep track of who is saying what. So in this instance, I would add that information to every bit of text. If you look at it, I didn't reference the themes because the themes are my interpretation of the content that we just analyzed. What I have referenced is the actual content that came out of the reference. Once you've done it for the first paper, then the next thing to do is to read more papers and add content from those papers to the structure that you've created. In the Virtual Tutor online resource, there are actually examples where I bring together contributions from different authors. You're probably feeling a bit apprehensive at this stage because you're thinking, I would never be able to do it as Miguel has done it. For the inexperienced researcher, it's bound to be daunting at first. However, once you start doing it, your experience will grow. And with that growing experience, your skills will grow too. And as you read more, as you analyze more, you will also accumulate more knowledge, which is important to be able to do the exercise. And both will help you to become better at it, to the point that towards the end of your dissertation, if you keep practicing it, you will do the exercise on a routine and automated basis. The advice that I would like to give you is to start small. Don't read too many papers to start with. Start with a small number and then analyze one, and then bring another one and revise your structure, and then a third one, a fourth one. And suddenly after 4 or 5, you will see that you've got a pretty good structure. And the second one is to start early. Don't wait too long to start analyzing your papers. Sometimes I feel that the students keep reading and reading and reading, and that works as an avoidance strategy. So identify a small number of papers and analyze them. Once you've done it enough and you are happy that you captured the most meaningful elements in the literature, then you are ready to write. And that's what stage 4 is about. If you want to know more about how to go from the doing, your bulleted point structure, to the writing, the text that will then you are going to include in your dissertation, check this video, as the video is about developing your skills related to moving from the doing to the writing.